Well, she is a trailblazer in sports media. Krista Blunk is with us on Twitter at Krista Blunk. You can find her on Pac-12 Network. You can find her on ESPN, the Olympics, Westwood One. The list goes on. And she joins me on the On to Something podcast. Clearly, she is on to something. I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio, and I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. So this is an opportunity to point out, Krista, your career and what you've done and the perseverance you've had, how you've had to grind and make it all happen, and why you are an inspirational figure in the industry. And I wanted to start here, Krista, because when we first started talking before this conversation, you told me that your career is sort of like a roller coaster. And that's the way you've looked at it ever since you finished college basketball at Evansville. You had over 1,000 points in your career, and you've probably called well over 1,000 games in your career in a variety of different sports. But going back to how you see your career as a roller coaster, when was that moment when there was a valley and you had to find a way to climb out of it and rebound?
Oh yeah, Brent, I've had a few valleys. Let me tell you, it's I think part of this business, maybe not everyone has gone through it, but I feel like so many people in this industry have had to have this story. But I also think it makes you stronger and it keeps you fighting to stay in it and keep doing what you love. And right off the bat, when I still lived in Indiana, I had just finished playing basketball professionally, and I was working at 3 different affiliates in town, 7 days a week, trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing? What do I want to do in this business? And then decided to make a big move to the West Coast and just decide, okay, we'll see what happens. I had a chance to work for a company and pay the bills and then try to work in the broadcasting industry on the side. And so you start all over. You move to a new place. You're trying to network. You're trying to meet people and trying to get a demo if you have anything to put together into a demo. And so that was probably that first valley of coming back from playing professionally, finishing college, and kind of saying, what am I going to do with my life, and what direction is this going to go? So that was probably the first one. And then you get going in one direction, and then I worked with a team with the WNBA, and then that's no longer. And then you say, okay, well, now what direction am I going? And so along the way, I've worked in other businesses to pay your bills until you can make it full time. And finally, you get to a point where you hope you can do it full time. And so, knock on wood, other than the pandemic, chipping away a little bit at the consistency, I've been able to do this and enjoy it.
Having to work like you have just to pay the bills and do the other things probably makes you appreciate even more where you are today and what you've been able to do. When you got to that stage, Krista, where you didn't necessarily have to tap into jobs that were probably not related to your dream, or maybe they were, but not where you wanted them to be as far as progressing in the trajectory that you were looking forward to and looking at, what did it mean to you to finally say goodbye to some of those odd jobs that you had to do? And then you could finally focus on your passion and what you wanted to do all along.
Yeah, as a lot of people know, it is hard to find a job when you're working in another job. And it's hard to, while you're maybe busy in the job maybe that you love, it's hard to continually network even to make sure you keep your name out there to people as well. And as a contractor, it's very important to do that. But it means a lot. And you look back, and as you said, it makes you have such a different appreciation. And I've always felt like I've had an appreciation for the entire business because I interned on the production side. I've run camera, I've pulled cables, I've done some of the work that you say, okay, maybe I don't want to do this full time, but I have an appreciation and know that it's all part of it. And I've worked on the sales side in the TV industry. I had an appreciation, for what they do and how important that job is as well. And so I think it does help me to, when that work's not there, to really appreciate and not complain that, hey, maybe it's on a Super Bowl Sunday, or maybe it's on a day when nobody else wants to work, but there are a lot worse things to be doing, that's for sure.
Krista Blunk is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. Krista, from all of us who look up to you and watch your work, what can we all appreciate about you and the work that you put into your craft that we don't see on television, behind the scenes and everything you do to refine and fine tune your abilities and skill set?
Yeah, I always think this is one of those businesses that you don't want to break down the hours and look at the hourly wage because
Yes,
because
that's a
there's a
good point.
lot that goes into it. But yeah, I watch a lot of games. I listen to a lot of other broadcasters. I I just do a lot of digging and research. It's a lot of research. It's a lot. I'd rather have too much information than not enough. And when it all comes down to it, I have a sheet full of stuff. But the most important things are talking with the coaches, talking with the players, those little stories that maybe somebody else didn't get a chance to be at practice. So, you do. And so, but you know what, depending on the event, if you need a little filler, nothing wrong with having a little bio info sitting on the side too. So a lot of research and like I said, a lot of listening to other people. And it's always really interesting to me to see how someone else sees a game, because I think we all view games so differently. And many times if I go back and I'm forced to listen to one that I'm calling, I will still see that game. Something will come into my head and it's almost 9 out of 10 times exactly the same as what I ended up saying. So I think I just see the game the way I see it. And you can try to tweak how you work and try to be and emulate others. But I do think everybody has their own style and what they do too.
So taking a field trip into your mind, how do you perceive the way you see a game?
Yeah. Well, as a former player at the college level and a little bit professionally, I probably see it more as a player. Whereas if I see a coach or listen to a coach calling it, it's very interesting to me to see how they are viewing it and what they're looking at. But for me, I'm looking at it from the player. I'm usually watching things that are happening away from the ball as well. I want to see what the players without the ball are doing, because to me, they're so important. And those that are moving and continually doing something when they don't have the ball in their hands. So a lot of times I'm looking in those directions, probably more, maybe more so than maybe a coach would. I don't know.
Someone a big time presence in this industry in Kate Scott, and people look at her, to take an analogy from the basketball court, like from a metaphorical sense, she's got the ball in her hands. She is now with the 76ers as their play-by-play voice. But those on the outside don't realize that, like you said, in the way you analyze, that there's other action happening on in the game. And one of the things that she would attribute to what she's done is your presence. And maybe that's a ball screen that's away from her on the other side of the key, but you're in the game with her and you've done stuff to elevate her. She says she owes her career to you. What say you?
Well, I think she probably had a cocktail that night when she spoke with you. Maybe two, possibly, if knowing Kate. No, I think she's wonderful. I think that one thing that as you get a little older in this business, I know early on it's competitive. And as a competitor, a former competitor, you are trying to make it in the business. And it's difficult sometimes to help someone else along or be okay because they might take your job, or it's tricky. It's kind of tricky. But I have also believed, and I just started to believe that there's work out there for all of us. There can be, and it would really be helpful to help these other younger individuals. And I think back to some of my mentors that I worked with, and I remember my very first game that I worked as an analyst with Beth Mullins. And Beth, it was my first ESPN game, big rivalry game. It was Virginia and North Carolina. And I remember meeting her and we were sitting there, and I know she probably knew this, but she said, "So how many games have you done?" And I wanted to say 100, but I had to tell her it's my first one. And it didn't even faze her. She just said, "We're going to have a great time," and how she handled that for me, it really put me at ease, because I know I was a bundle of nerves and just, excited but nervous and wanted to do so well. And she was probably thinking, "Oh, great, I've got this rookie with me." But if she was, she never let on to me that she did. She made me feel really comfortable. And so I want to try to do that as well. I just really try to believe there's enough work out there for all of us, and we need to keep making room for more of us.
I love that mentality, and I totally agree with you. Krista Blunk is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. When somebody watches your work, Krista, what do you want them to come away with as far as what you're trying to get out there, and how you want them to take in a broadcast?
Well, mostly now, working with college student athletes and programs, um, it's about them, right? It's about what are they feeling? What are they going through, right? If there's any kind of stories that we want to tell people about, but what's this kid feeling that maybe just missed that crucial free throw, or maybe made that crucial free throw, or I hope that it comes across that I'm excited for them, that this is a moment. And I remember my final day playing college ball and wishing that I had more. And I had friends who swam and did other sports in college who were so ready to be done. And I just remember thinking, I'm so glad that's not my situation. I'm glad that I still wish there was more. And I'm sure that most of these student athletes, I mean, it's just incredible, their opportunity. And I want to get that, I like to get those messages out there. And it's not all pretty and easy and nice, and some of it's fun and great and amazing. So there's just a lot of stories, and I hope that as the games are going along and they're telling the story that they're telling, that there's also some behind the scenes stories.
A place in a broadcast format where you are probably encouraged to intertwine stories is when you're calling the Olympics, because the stories of these athletes and where they come from, what they've overcome, and you having that opportunity to be a part of multiple broadcasts of different sports for these latest Olympics, where were you able to really find and get to that storytelling love that you have? Were you able to inject that into a broadcast in a way that you're very proud of?
Oh, wow. It was the most remarkable and incredible experience. It's one that I'd always wanted to be a part of. Once my dreams of knowing I wasn't going to be an Olympian were shattered many, many years ago, then it was like, how can I be involved with this? And just being part of it was incredible. And to cover multiple sports, as you said, what I was so enamored with were all of the analysts that I worked with. These were Olympians, these were people that loved it. And so the very first encounter for me with judo, and I'm thinking, I have to try to understand this. And when I would sit and watch with my analyst and our statistician and researcher, these guys live and breathe judo, and they made me excited about it. They made me understand what it meant for the Tokyo Games and for Japan to be hosting and to try to do as well as they can, and that the U.S. and their presence in certain weight classes, and what it meant for certain countries. And so I found that I was just feeding off of them so often, whether it was shooting, going for a gold, or canoe slalom, the intensity, and just watching these individuals. Artistic swimming, have no idea how they do what they do, and it's just incredible. So they can't touch the bottom of the pool. I don't know if people know this. They're creating platforms without touching anything on the bottom. So a lot of it, I think, really came from the analyst's energy, and we were able to I could kind of live their dream in some ways, I guess.
One of the dreams that must have felt like it to you was also being able to call the Paralympic Games, and knowing how inspirational all these athletes are, and especially doing it in basketball. And these were broadcasts that were on television, and you being a part of these, when you rate, and it's probably impossible, Krista, with all that you've done and that you will continue to do, to try, and I'm not here to say, hey, what was the best event, or what one did you have the most pride in, because it's probably impossible. You've had so many great experiences. But from a perspective of not putting you on the spot, where does getting to be a part of that Paralympic Games, wheelchair basketball, knowing your own history with basketball, knowing how much you care about other people, where does that stack up with you as far as what you've done in your career?
Right. I mean, it's up there, right? I mean, it's right next to and wedged to the Olympic coverage and Final Four coverage and conference championship coverage, all those major events that you just know how much blood, sweat, and tears these athletes have put in, the time, the parents that had to drive them places early on to get them to AAU or whatever it might be so that they could get to these places. I mean, there's so much that's gone into it, and just it's up there. As I sat there, and my analyst Paul, he was amazing, and he's an Olympian, and oh, I could see him, and we were in a booth together, and he was so excited, and I was so excited for him because the U.S. men won the gold, and there was a lot of pressure on them because they were supposed to win the gold. The U.S. women were a new, very young team, and they ended up winning the bronze medal. There was so much excitement for them as well. I mean, it was truly kind of a will they win a medal or not kind of thing, you know, new team and excitement. And so, but what goes into it, I know how hard it was to train when I trained, and when I see what they do an entire game, there's some of these athletes that did not sub out, you know, they stayed on the floor the entire way. The body strength that they have to have, the upper body strength that they have to continually move themselves up and down the court at incredible speed, then also shoot the ball at the same time. It's like playing twice, you know, or playing double at the same time, I guess you'd say, you know, and just major respect for what they accomplish.
Well, so many people have so much respect for you over the course of your career. Who has been your biggest cheerleader?
Oh, wow, good question on that one. Well, you know, my friends are just wonderful friends. My family is as well. I think some of my former coaches, and I had an amazing high school coach. He's no longer with us, and it's but Steve Whitaker, boy, I'll tell you what, he was also a football coach in high school, so some of our drills were pretty tough. But he also had an understanding. He was the one that was sending video of me out when all I was doing was playing and had no idea, oh, there might be a chance for me to play past this. You know, he understood and he knew. And I would come back from playing, you know, I would come back at college in the holidays and go to practices, and then he and I would do some one-on-one practice, you know, play. And I feel like he was such a big cheerleader for me. My parents were, my dad in particular. I remember the first basketball he bought me was one of those big red, white, and blue basketballs, you know, and it's like the most bouncy, rubbery basketball. But I remember that, and just so many things that he encouraged me to play sports. He encouraged my sister, you know, he encouraged us to get involved. We didn't have brothers, but we had a neighborhood full of boys, so we had to hold our own. So he encouraged us to get out there and do it and be part of it. And I think, you know, it all started there. And then as I went along, I had incredible coaches that encouraged me as well. And from a broadcast standpoint, I think, you know, just friends and other mentors in the business, we all kind of lift each other up, especially through the pandemic. I was really amazed at how many of us were able to stay in contact. How you doing today? What's going on? You know, there was a lot of downtime in this industry during the pandemic, and a lot of nerves and worries. And so I think it was pretty amazing how many of us all stayed in contact with one another.
The coaching that you got, like you said, from a sports perspective, from the encouragement from your father, your friends, whether that's in your sporting life of playing, but also where internally for you, Krista, when you knew that, like we were talking about a little bit earlier in this conversation, that it can be hard to break into the business. And sure, there are a lot of people out there that, you know, are negative, and you got to wade and weave through those people because you have a goal and you're going to get there. What was that message internally from you to listen to what you wanted to do? Even when there are people out there that say, well, you should do this, or well, you should do this, or maybe you should give up on that. Why didn't you fall victim to going in a different direction when it would have been understandable, like you were talking about earlier, that you might have gone a different way, but you stayed the course? How was that possible for you?
There were several different steps along the way. You know, the very first moment I remember, the last day of college classes, and our advisor says to us, well, you're getting ready to get your communications degree, and by the way, less than 3% of you will actually work in this business. I thought, I am going to be in that 3%. You know, luckily for me at the time, I still had enough coming off of the college basketball days. I had enough competitiveness in me, I think, to say, I'm going to prove you wrong, or I'm at least going to be in that 3%, right? You know, I do think some of it was just, I'm fairly competitive. I think some of it was just still that drive, young enough to not know what I don't know, I guess, too. So you just kind of keep chipping away at it. And then later on, it gets harder. It gets harder and harder as you go. But it becomes something that you're so connected with and that you so love that it matters. It doesn't just matter because you're getting a paycheck. Like it matters to you, and you find that your connections with the other people in the business, everybody will shift and move around to different places, but if you keep those connections with people, they find you. Different people will find you, and it's such a cyclical business. But I feel like now, as I've gotten a bit older and I don't have quite the same energy to fight for it maybe as I did back then, we all kind of help each other if we can, and we stay connected as we've been throughout, and it helps us kind of keep going in this business.
No question. Krista Blunk is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. I want to leave you with this last question. Spanning your broadcasting career and what you've worked on, all the different sports, the countless number of networks that you've worked for, how do you evaluate what you've done from a source of pride, but also a source of dealing with that always driving to do more? So how do you sit with yourself when you look back? What comes to mind when you look at the body of work that you've done and all that you've accomplished, and how that resonates with you?
It's hard to believe that I've been doing this as long as I've been doing it, and I think when I really sit and think about it, it's pretty remarkable in that, I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, and I played at a Division I school, but I wasn't an Olympian. I didn't go to a major broadcast school, but we did luckily have a communications and a broadcast department. I took some chances, and I remember my dad asking me when I took an offer to go play basketball in Australia. He said, why are you going to do this? And I said, why wouldn't I? They're going to pay for me to go play ball in Australia, And he goes, well, that's a good point. So I just think I was willing to take some chances, and I think you have to in this business a little bit. And sometimes you're not completely sure, is this the right thing I should or shouldn't do? Is this the right thing I should take or turn down? I leaned on people. I reached out to people when I was younger and said, am I doing as much as I can? Will you take a look at my demo? Do you think I should continue to play overseas, or is it time to come back to the States and get back into this business? And I'm just incredibly lucky that I've had people to help give me advice, and I'm glad I was willing to ask for advice. And so I guess I look at it and I'm just so thrilled to think that I am still working in this business, and that I get to call it my career. I get to call it what I do. And, I don't know how long it'll last. I've said that forever, but you know what? I worked with the WNBA the first day it started too. And I remember telling people, I don't know how long it's going to last, but I hope it lasts for a really long time. And look where they are, so you just never know. I know one thing, I just have to keep enjoying it. When you don't enjoy it, then it's time to do something else.
I have a feeling, a hunch that you're always going to enjoy it. And part of it is that mental compass that you've had from the start. I noticed that, where it's led you down the right path. Even if you've never experienced something, it's like there was something in the back of your mind that said, let's go this way, let's explore that. And that is, in essence, championing those chances and taking a chance. And that's led you to where you are today by following what you've always been a part of, what you've always dreamed, and never letting anybody get in the way of that. And that is why, one of the many reasons, Krista, you are inspirational. Krista Blunk on Twitter at Krista Blunk. You can find her Pac-12 Network, ESPN, the list goes on, the Mountain West, along with many other broadcasting outfits. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. Krista, really appreciate you opening up like this and talking about your journey in a way that I think that, in reflection, a lot of people are going to garner strength from. And you yourself had to have a lot of strength. And I just want people to see this and see that out of you, because you don't get the credit you deserve. Appreciate your time.
Bryan, thanks so much. I had a great time, and I hope that everybody keeps fighting through their journey, whatever that might be.